Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we have a head-to-head, driver head-to-head. We love one of those.
You love a driver
We
head-to-head.
love a driver, more than most. We
Yes.
love a driver head-to-head. Last week was the embargo for the TSi4.
Yeah, exciting.
Very exciting. We're going to do a little head-to-head. The kind of obvious test is TSi3 versus TSi4.
Yeah, and why is a TSi4 necessary for which
Exactly.
type of player, basically?
When we look at the two heads, obviously 460cc in the TSi3, your driver.
Yeah.
We want to talk about what the TSi is truly trying to do from a design perspective. So this is the furthest forward and lowest center of gravity that Titleist has ever made in a driver. What that's designed to do is basically deliver less dynamic loft. And that's why, again, it's more important, Matty, that we use the same loft rather than your 10 versus this 9 is
Yes.
we want to see the influence of that CG position being moved.
How is weight placement changing the tilt of the head?
So if we say that the CG is all the way back here, and it's not, I mean, it's somewhere kind of in here in terms of the depth of the head, but say we say it's all the way back there, that head wants to move as far forward as the shaft will allow it to move.
Oh, okay.
Right, and that's where the head will move up and
Right.
deliver more dynamic. So, and obviously the further forward we move that, the less dynamic loft, the less force you're going to get placed against that shaft. So the center of gravity of that shaft axis and where it is relative to the face, they're going to be much more in alignment, so you'll have more of the true loft rather than enhanced dynamic loft.
It's really interesting. And it kind of also speaks to how important shaft pairing is, because really what you're talking about is the head design. In fact, to get the loft to change, the shaft is the thing that needs to actually be moving differently to deliver the loft.
100%.
Pretty interesting stuff.
And that's where some of the nuances that really, even in a fit, we're not really even telling people what we're trying to do with that sort of stuff. I'm going to pick a head that has a deeper CG, a shaft that's a little bit softer to enhance the dynamic loft. And, you know, it's the relationship, you know, because one of the questions I always get is, you know, the influence of tip soft shafts and tip stiff shafts. Well, it's all relative to the head. So you can take a really, really deep CG and a very stiff tipped shaft, and you can take a forward CG and a softer tip shaft and kind of, you know, cancel one another out.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's where sometimes we see in performance of shafts, tip soft or tip stiff, it doesn't do exactly what you think it's going to.
Based on the influence of the head.
Based
That's
on that.
really cool.
Yeah.
But for today's purposes, we're keeping the shaft the same, keeping the loft and settings exactly the same. We're not going to use the sliding weight, although it's a big
Neutral.
advantage, let's be honest.
Yeah, it would be, and definitely. And if we were doing a fit video, we would. But we're trying to just keep the test relative to the CG, you know, front and back.
Love it.
All right, Matty boy, let's get a couple little baseliners with you. We're going to use your shaft again, keeping that a constant, so that really the only thing we are analysing today is head to head, what that delivery on centre of gravity is going to be. I think for the people who really should be paying attention to this video, the high spinners, the steep players, the high speed players, the you know, people who struggle with apex, balloon and ball flights, you know, they're people who struggle with too much delivered loft. Everything there that we're looking for, that's a really, really good sign for this test. I mean, those are perfect numbers, as they always are when it comes to you testing TSi3. One of the things, the vertical CG element, TSi3, to me, when I test it, has one of the higher centers of gravity.
Agree.
That's why it spins a fraction more for me.
Yep.
It gives great ball speed numbers, good launch, but it does creep the spin up a little bit. So I'm curious to see what TSi4 does.
It makes sense that TSi4 is in the lineup, because you're right. This is not the lowest spinning head
Definitely
in the
not.
market. New Sims lower spin, new Callaways are lower spin.
Yep.
So. It's a better strike. It spun a bit more.
Really nice. Okay, so as we've come to expect from TSi3, nothing but the highest level of performance. It's the most balanced driver I've ever seen you hit, or the most balanced outcome I've ever seen you had from a driver. So if we look at the numbers on average there, 18.7 degrees of delivered loft, 12.2 and 2300. Anyone who knows the channel and you know, when we pause to talk about numbers, we know that's about what we're looking for. 304 in the carry, 326. It's really, really good.
So looking at this after you passed it over to me, I can see how it appeals to certain people. It's definitely smaller and more compact. I don't think the shaping of it is as nice as the 3 though, my opinion.
I completely agree.
So the heel section actually has, to me, too much kind of meat there.
It definitely does, doesn't it? Yeah, it's almost boxy in the heel.
A little bit boxy. So I think, I'm not exactly shocking anyone by saying this, it's a very niche product. So I'd imagine the person that's looking for this super low spin small driver, maybe this is exactly what you like to look at.
I mean, this is nothing new for Titleist really to bring out a lower spin, smaller headed offering. The first time I think we saw these you know, the 4 element to the you know, the D2, the D3, the D4. The first one I remember was actually 907 D4. That was tiny. I remember that one, very, very boxy. But even going back further than that, there was when Tiger's driver, the 975D, the one that he played with the steel shaft that he hit a million miles.
Yeah.
There was a 976R version back in the late 90s, 210cc.
Picturing what that would look like as
Tiny.
a driver. Yeah.
That's kind of trying to bring that same sort of design principle, but bring it with some modern technology.
It's pretty interesting. You're right, though. They've literally had that kind of design heritage for 25 years.
Exactly.
Really
exactly.
interesting. I didn't realize it had gone back that far.
Yeah, a long way. Great swing there, Matty.
That felt, I don't know, exactly the way I was swinging with TSi3. It's just amazing how different that ball is
So
flying.
different.
Night and day. That's hit well.
Thunderbolt.
The high spin players should be literally licking their lips right now.
Is it better than you thought it would be?
It's easier to hit than I thought
Yeah,
it would
it seems better than I was kind of expecting. In sort of round up to the generic test that we're going to do with this,
be. Yeah,
we have seen 5 degrees delivered loft difference.
that is really cool.
Kind of pretty similar dispersion. You're seeing a difference in apex. Let's see exactly what that number is. 84 versus 116, so you know, fully 30 feet in height.
Extremely noticeable on the golf course, that would be.
We're going to try and apply the functionality of why you would need this lower dynamic loft, lower launch, lower spin.
On-course situation, right?
On-course situation. So we're at Carnoustie. The wind is blowing a little bit. I mean, to be honest, 10 miles an hour is enough for this test not to be silly, but show enough of a difference.
It's going to affect the ball, but it's not a goofy day of golf.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, we should see some differences here with regards to the way the golf ball is affected by the wind.
And the high spin driver player, a windy day like this is really their nightmare.
Definitely. And then you're in such a nice spot with your driver for a perfect cam day if you're playing in the desert or something like that. In a headwind, 23 will
be interesting.
Slightly stall and blown up a little bit.
Yeah, we should see quite a bit of separation.
Definitely. So let's hit a couple. If we go over and look at that apex, I mean, it pushed it really, really high. 11.5 and 2500, and it only carried 277.
So when we were hitting them stock before, I believe around 302 was the carry. So we're talking about 25 yards of carry, and then obviously the ball is going to roll less because it's coming in so much steeper.
If we can get that land angle to change, I mean, that land angle coming in there was probably mid-40s,
Oh, wow.
48. Coming in like a
9
7
iron?
iron. Yeah, that's something like, something with some loft for sure.
But this is great. This is exactly what happens. A person can't get their spin down. This is a really good driver. It's well fitted, but maybe they just can't get that spin quite down enough to play in the wind. And
Absolutely.
TSi4 looks like the right option for them.
Definitely. Right, let's hit a couple more with this one and then we'll flip back to the 4.
That's definitely getting through the wind better.
I mean, you're so pleased with that. I mean, relative to the field, you're gaining some
yards, aren't you?
serious ground.
Yeah.
We saw it's a very similar outcome from the range test in terms of the difference in delivered loft. Very interesting to watch your path evolve as you saw some toe strikes that wanted to curve.
Yes.
You start swinging a bit more left.
Not helpful for me, is it?
No, and it's that kind of influence the club has on the swing, positive or negative.
It could be very positive for someone that swings over the top. You're right.
If we look at the ball data, love these little tracers just to kind of give people an idea as to what we're seeing. But the speed is obviously higher because of the lower dynamic loft.
Makes sense.
More energy applied. Launch came out very similar, and the spin was down 700. A 12-yard pickup in carry distance, but almost a 20-yard pickup in total distance. And that's the moral of the story. A 45.1 degree angle of descent versus a 36 degree angle of descent.
Right.
That's where the gains are going to be made.
Gotcha. And that's what this driver is basically designed to do.
That is exactly what it's designed to do.
It is certainly not user-friendly. I'm not going to say this is a low maintenance driver. However, I do believe this TSi4 is easier to hit than TS4 was.
And it leads us into we can't go doing this video without talking about Adam Scott and Autoflex. So now we maybe are starting to understand why he's paired those two things up a little bit. He has a shaft that he can sort of, get to kick a little bit. It's of a right weight. He can get the dynamic loft down a little bit. Some of the things I've talked about, whether it's here or on my Instagram, about how to get more out your driver, is to pair slightly longer with slightly lighter head weights with slightly lower lofts. Right. And that lower loft being dynamic loft, not static
Not
loft.
static loft, yeah. Very interesting.
You can now start to understand why he's doing what he's doing.
Very good.
Good. This test, to be honest, was as often happens, it was more value in that than just a head-to-head TSi3, TSi4.
I agree. If you never buy a Titleist driver, hopefully there was still plenty of information in here about why you wouldn't just go, here's a 9 degree, here's a 9 degree. These drivers couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
That one literally performs like a 2 degree driver compared to mine at 9 degrees. It's amazing.
Huge difference. Yeah. Okay, guys. Hopefully, if you're the player out there who's struggling with too much spin, you're delivering too much loft. I'm somebody who loves an 8 degree driver, so this is something that I'm looking forward to hitting.
I think you should definitely try this. It's not as punishing on strike as I expected.
Yeah.
It's the only reason for me it was starting offline was the low spin.
Right.
If it was spinning in the right window, I don't think you would struggle with this for patterns. Yeah.
All right, maybe we'll do a little dabble in that in the future when
Nice.
When the righty demos make it our way. Stay tuned, guys. We'll see you again soon.